Look, we tend to treat trust like it's a dramatic moment. Like one day the switch flips and suddenly you know what you want and you have follow through and you back yourself completely. But let's keep it 1,000. Okay. That's not really how it works. And if it were, we'd all be doing that thing differently. We'd all be trusting ourselves endlessly by now. Before we get into it, welcome back. I'm Vicky. This is Victorious Coaching. We are on month 2, week 4. We are moving into the doing of it all, doing something with what we've been building up to now. If you are just jumping in afresh, go back to week 1. You'll want to go in order. You can find that in the description. In week 1, just a little light review, we talked about what it means to not know what you want, right? I spent most of my life thinking I just didn't have strong preferences. Turns out, not true. It was disconnection from my own body, my own knowing, right? So how do we reconnect and align? In week 2, we got into why self-trust erodes in the first place, especially for late diagnosed women, the difference between self-trust and confidence, and we walked through the truth versus story process to separate what actually happened from what your brain made it mean. That process is also in the show notes if you're interested. It's free. And then week 3, we went more somatic. Body scanning, the yes, no, maybe, learning that your body already has a language and you've probably been overriding it for years because the noise in your head is louder. The radio station that your brain tends to default to, if you will. So all of that is the foundation. This week, we're building on it. And I've noticed that many treat self-trust like a destination. Like there's a finish line to be crossed. And from that point on, you make clean decisions, stop second guessing yourself, never betray yourself again, no imposter syndrome. How fortuitous. That's not self-trust. That's a fant or a fantasy, if you will. And it's a clever way to avoid doing the work because if trust is somewhere you have not yet arrived at, you can keep on waiting for it instead of practicing it or moving toward it. And self trust is a practice. The only way you get better at it is by doing it imperfectly, messily, repeatedly over time. It's how you eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time. Not because it's a cute little metaphor, but there's literally no other way. That's it. That's all you got. So, my lower back. Before we get into the practice, I just want to name something that I think is really important, especially if you are late diagnosed, because it frames a lot of the shame you may be carrying about your own follow through. Our brains are wired differently around 2 things primarily that are directly relevant in this space: dopamine and time. With dopamine, ADHD brains are not short on motivation, actually. We are short on the neurochemical reward signal that makes low stimulation, repetitive tasks feel worth doing in the moment, which means when the commitment is small and quiet and not immediately exciting, our brain truly doesn't produce the same "this matters, keep going" signal that other brains get from something like routine. It's not laziness, it's not a character flaw, it's a dopamine access problem. The payoff of a kept promise, the slow accumulation of self trust, delayed gratification, those are all too abstract and too future oriented and expansive to generate the hit that our brains need right now. So when it comes to time, ADHD brains struggle with something called temporal discounting, which is a fancy way of saying that future you doesn't quite feel real. The version of you who would benefit from the thing you do today is, to your nervous system, essentially a stranger, right? So when you make a commitment on Monday that requires follow through on Thursday, part of what's happening is that Thursday you feels actually significantly distant and abstract from Monday you. And this is why we make ambitious plans with total sincerity and then arrive at the day and feel weirdly disconnected from the person who made them or disconnected from the why. And then we may procrastinate, delay, dismiss the thing because we're no longer the person we were when we made the plan. I'm telling you this not so that you have another excuse, but so that you stop diagnosing yourself as someone who fundamentally can't be trusted, or is always this, or is always that, or just simply doesn't know, or has no preferences. The architecture is different, which means that the approach has to be different as well. Thus, we practice, right? So, micro commitments, small promises you make to yourself, sized honestly to your actual current capacity and energy level, that you then keep. The commitment isn't about the task, it's about the relationship, right? Someone entered my room. Every kept promise is a deposit into your self trust account. Every promise that you don't keep quietly slides into withdrawal. And most of us have been making withdrawals for a longer time. And this practice in micro commitments is how we can start making deposits again. So, given the dopamine piece, the commitment needs to be small enough that completing it produces a real felt sense of done. Not a list item checked off or an aspirational plan, an actual moment of, I said I'd do this and I did it. I am lit, therefore. That moment, however minuscule, is a genuine neurological event. Your brain registers it. Over time, the registrations compound. Given the time blindness piece, it helps to keep the commitment close. Same day, same context, same trigger point if possible. The further away the follow through is from the commitment, the more it's asking future you, who feels like a stranger, to honor a promise made by past you, who's already gone. So shrink the gap whenever you can. Something that works really well are sprints, working in sprints, right, for us. And this isn't binary. Someone decided that you either do the thing perfectly or you've completely failed and that you need to start over on Monday. And that kind of thinking is the enemy of follow through, especially for our ADHD brains, where an all or nothing framework basically guarantees the nothing every time. So let's say you have committed to a 5-minute walk after lunch. Monday, Tuesday, done. Wednesday, something happens, you didn't do it. With binary thinking, you failed. Streak is broken. I quit. Fuck it. Might as well never walk again. I can barely do anything as I thought. Am I right? But what if Wednesday you put your shoes on? What if you stood outside for 40 seconds? What if you did a little housework that day? Does any of that count? Under the lens of perfectionism, no. Under the framework of building a muscle and collecting honest data for micro commitments, yes, it works. Because showing up at 20% on a hard day is still showing up. And that information, that you showed up at 20% on a hard day, tells you something important about what you need. Progress does not require perfection. It requires honest measurement. And those are very different things. So, to get started, size the commitment. One thing, not a list. One thing, make it laughably small. Resistance to this is normal. Our brains love a big swing because big swings feel like bigger motivation and a bigger payoff. But big swings are also how you've ended up here again before. So then you honestly track it. Evidence collection, not a productivity tool. Every day, note what happened without editorial, just data, objectivity. At the end of the week, get curious about the gaps. What was happening on the days you didn't follow through? Gather information. We're not collecting character flaws. Consider creating a cookie jar with this step, okay? Check the show notes for a template that's also free. Lastly, is the weekly review. So 2 questions only. What did I actually do? And what does that tell me about what I need? Not what's wrong with me, what do I need to succeed? Because sometimes the data reveals the commitment was the wrong size. Sometimes the data reveals you followed through significantly more than you gave yourself credit for. And the story you were running is not accurate. This also helps to alleviate success amnesia. So there's an episode on that as well that you can find. Trust is a muscle. It gets stronger through consistent, imperfect, usually boring repetition. Nobody builds self-trust from one powerful ayahuasca breakthrough, okay? No matter how real that breakthrough was. The breakthrough opens the door to a jar. The practice is what you do to be able to walk through the door and be able to come back and forth. And for ADHD brains, the practice has to be built differently, smaller, closer, honest data instead of aspirational planning, with a lot more compassion than we typically give to ourselves, and a much more accurate read on what we actually have the capacity for right now, which brings in our body scanning and where our body's at. One commitment, small enough to keep, tracked honestly, reviewed without punishment. Go make one small promise to yourself today, right now, a real one, sized to you, kept once, pop it into the comments once you've made the decision, and then do it again tomorrow. Through month 3 of this course that we're getting into shortly, we're going to go into the beliefs you've been living from without choosing them, also known as masking. Shadow work adjacent, it's where the deeper patterns finally start to make sense. So I will see you there. In the meantime, take care of yourselves. Ciao for now.